Welcome back, honors. All right, so great class today. All right, I know I'm only talking about like my E period right now, but you know, you're the only ones I've seen. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into where we left off, right? We showed you the pictures of Parliament. We talked about the Magna Carta, yay, and how it like established informally this entire system of like British reign and the legislative body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, yada, 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 right? So anyway, getting into it, let's talk about what the Parliament does exactly, right? So what the Parliament does is they pass laws that directly affect citizens. They uphold basic citizen rights, which include like no illegal seizure of property by a king, no, habeas corpus, the right to a trial by jury. But most importantly, Parliament's biggest function during the time period that we're about to talk about, and you can put a star next to number 3, is they approve raises in tax money, and they also delegate how the tax money is going to be spent. All right, so the biggest thing about them is that they do this right here, okay? So let's go ahead and keep getting into it, though. Why would this drive an absolutist absolutely insane, right? So this would drive people like this guy that we're about to get into, James the First, all right? Absolutely nuts, because now he can't spend money that he believes he is rightly owed, right? That means that if the king wanted to build a new palace, he has to use his own money. If he wants to do whatever, he has to use the money that he is actually allowed to use by the government, right? So that Magna Carta and that document is going to strictly limit their power, and the Parliament is going to keep those kings in check all the time, right? So, but now we're going to see the rise of the Stuart family, right? Which in honors we already talked about. In 1603, Elizabeth dies. Now, who's supposed to get the throne? Mary, Queen of Scots, right? So in 1603, Elizabeth dies, right? The person that was supposed to receive the throne was a woman by the name of Mary, Queen of Scots, her first cousin, right? Now, the problem is she is supposed to take over, but she can't really do that because she's very, very dead, all right? So she is struck down by Elizabeth herself, right? She actually is executed by Elizabeth for apparently perpetrating an infamous plot to have her overthrown and blah, 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 which probably never actually happened. But then again, it might have, because she did like kill her own husband and all this other stuff, right? So, but anyway, getting into it a little bit more, okay? So the throne is going to end up passing to their closest living relatives, the Stuart family. The big one is James the Sixth of Scotland, all right? So James the Sixth of Scotland is the son, the Protestant son of Mary, Queen of Scots, who was a Catholic, all right? So some of y'all are like, oh man, I bet James is about to come flying in here with those tight pants and that weird outfit, and he's going to be mad because England put his mother to death. Remind me to tell you the execution story of Mary, Queen of Scots tomorrow. Hilarious. But surprisingly enough, no. So James accepted the death of his mother. James became King of Scotland at the age of 1. He was a 1-year-old child when he actually became the King of Scotland, right? Of course, it wasn't ruled by him. It was ruled by these people known as regents, right? So, regents. Right, really quick. How old James VI when crowned? Double check. Make sure. Yeah, James was anointed King of the Scots at 13 months. All right, so this guy actually didn't even really know his mom that well, because when he was actually crowned king, she had ran off to England, right? And she was hiding in England in different parts, but then Elizabeth thought that she was going to try and take over the throne because she was Catholic and take it back to Catholicism, so she had her imprisoned for 18 years before she then has her executed, right? So James the First right here, this is what he actually looks like whenever he's the King of the Scots, right? He looks like a normal man. He's got dashingly tight pants on because apparently that was the style at the time. Pantyhose were originally made for men to try and show off the curvature of their legs, right? Apparently that was like the big thing, okay? But here's the thing. James is this, but he sees himself as this. What's the big difference between how he is and how he sees himself? None other than the fact that James the First of England hates Parliament. Now, you'll notice for a second I say, see what happened there? Yeah, so James the First of England and James the Sixth of Scotland, same guy. All right, so if you ever see on a test or in a book or anything like that, James the Sixth and the First, it's because he's the sixth king of Scotland named James, but he's the first king of England named James. And what happened when he took the crown, they united Scotland and England together, and England already owned Ireland, so the idea of a united Great Britain was born because he takes the throne. And here's the funny thing about it as well. James hates Parliament with a fiery, fiery passion because he believes in a concept known as the divine right of kings, right? He's got that D in absolutism, right? That D that stands for the A, B, C, Ds. Bureaucracy, centralized government, but he believes hard in that divine right of kings shenanigans, right? So James is the first Stuart to take over since Elizabeth, who worked well with Parliament along with the Tudors, who worked well along with her father, who worked well along with her brother Edward and even her sister Mary, right? But he believes that the Parliament is just limiting his God-given ability to be an absolute ruler, right? So he believes he is this, blessed by God himself, as you can see in this scepter that has the cross on it, to rule over the English people because he knows better. Because here's the thing about James. He was a scholar. He's a very wildly smart individual, right? Very, very intelligent, and he believed that he knew better for his people because he was smarter than all of them they were. So as we can tell, James is a little cocky out the gate, right? So James even also had a family already. He was married. He had 2 sons, right? So his one son, Henry, accompanied him to England because he was like, I'm going to teach this young man, Henry, how to be the best absolute ruler he can be. And he left his little son, Charles, back in Scotland because Charles was really weak. He was very, very sick all the time, very, very small, underweight, undersized, always getting fevers and stuff like that. So he's like, you need to stay here in Scotland. You might not be able to handle the travel. So he leaves one of his sons behind, basically to just be with maids and be alone for most of his young life, which is really sad, James. What the heck, dude? And his also biggest problems are the fact that Parliament hates him, all right? So they do not like him much at all. They think he's crude. They think he's crass. They don't like the fact that he does not respect them, right? So also not to mention the fact as well, James is very perturbed by the fact that they are going to be the thing infringing upon his great power, right? He actually at one point, here's an example of why Parliament hates James, right? James believed that the people should never see him, that he should rule from a palace, and that no one should interact with him, and that he should just be in the background doing his own thing, right? One time, one of his courtiers, one of his favorites actually came to him. They were like, sir, the people want to see you. The people want to see you. And excuse my language, okay, for all the parents out there, but I'm directly quoting this man, all right? So, and he said, God's wounds. I'd rather pull down my britches and show him me arse, all right? He actually said he'd rather moon the people of England than have them see his face. This is how arrogant he was. So the Parliament's just like, oh, they can't stand him, right? Also, James doesn't like Puritans, all right? So Puritans are these people that are running around England right now, another type of Protestant, right? So you're telling me right now, Mr. Terry, that there are several different types of religion competing for dominance within England? There are, guys, there are. You've got Catholics versus Protestants when it goes to Catholic versus Anglican, but then you got Anglican versus Puritan because the Puritans are like, Anglicans are too much like Catholics, and they want to purify all these different things. And a lot of y'all know about the Puritans already. You know that those Puritan separatists are the ones that settled Plymouth, which we'll get into here in a second. And his other big problem that he has going in is he wants more money, all right? So he wants more money because he sits there and he's like, I'm tired of this allowance that I get. Because traditionally for the longest time in England, you received a customs tax. You got a tax on boats that came in and a tax on goods that came in. And it was almost like the king got an allowance, right? So, but he was sick of it. He was like, I don't want an allowance. I want big stuff, right? And so some of the crazy things that end up happening with him, his accolades and his facts, right? Jamestown, Virginia in 1607 was settled while he was in power, right? Named directly after him. And then he tried to pay homage to the Virginia Company named after Queen Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen, right? Because here's the crazy thing. He didn't directly settle the Jamestown colony, but he allowed them to do that, right? He told them, go out and make your own money, but you need to pay me this customs tax. See what I'm talking about? He just wanted a bigger allowance. And he also then pushed these other separatist Puritans out to Plymouth. He was like, look, nobody likes you. You don't want to be a part of our church. You think we're too Catholic. So go settle Plymouth in Massachusetts. How about that? And then so it sends him to go settle Plymouth in the Mayflower, right, in 1610, right? Then there's another crazy thing that happens to him. The gunpowder plot, right? The gunpowder plot was crazy. This guy right here named Guy Fawkes tries to blow him up, right? Like literally tries him and 7 Catholic conspirators were like, oh, his mom was Catholic. Maybe he'll lighten up the Catholic prejudice and let us do our own thing. And then James was like, ha, no, and refused to let Catholics worship openly in the public. And so 7 of them got together and they were like, we're going to stack 2 tons of gunpowder underneath Parliament. And when he goes in there to address the Parliament, we're going to blow him up. A bunch of his buddies narked him out, though. And on November the 5th, they celebrate Gunpowder Day every single year in England. It's kind of like our 4th of July. They shoot off fireworks and stuff. But back in the day, it used to be an extreme anti-Catholic holiday because the Catholics were the ones that tried to blow him up. And they used to burn effigies of this guy named Guy Fawkes, right? They even have a poem about it. It goes, remember, remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I should think of no reason why the gunpowder treason shall ever be forgot. And they actually used to celebrate a big holiday based around anti-Catholicism, right? So because of the gunpowder plot. Now, also, though, he's going to do some other stuff since he's a big-time Protestant. He has the Bible translated into the King James Version, right? The English version. He even tries to make tobacco illegal, right? Because he's like, I don't like it. It offends my senses and it stinks. And tried to, like, put a big tax on it and stuff. But people were like, nah, and they told him to shut up all the time. Basically, he tried to illegalize tobacco, and his own people didn't even listen to him, and they just kept smoking it and chewing it all they wanted to, right? So that's absolutely hilarious that they're not even listening to him. That's he thinks he's got absolute authority, but he doesn't, right? So he wants to raise taxes for himself all the time so he can build a new banquet hall at Whitehall Palace and make all this new stuff for himself, even though people are like, yeah, you're not going to do that. And also there's a lot of controversy surrounding him, a lot of controversy, talking about, like, we don't know if... a lot of stuff. We'll talk about the controversy tomorrow, right? So, but the biggest thing about it is James fails at absolutism. He does all this crazy stuff, and he tries to do all these different things, and the Parliament just ends up ignoring him. James fails miserably, but here comes his angry son, and some of you are like, oh, here comes Henry. He's probably fuming right now. He's going to help his dad. What happened to Henry? Henry's dead. All right, so like Henry died during James's rule. So who does the throne pass to other than Charles I, Charles Stuart, right? Charles ends up taking the throne of England after a miserable, really, really bad attempt by his dad to try and assert absolute authority. And Charles resents his father, right? He does not like him. I'll give you a little Charles background, all right? Charles don't like his dad. Charles thinks his dad was a bum. Charles thinks his dad did too much. Charles thinks his dad didn't, like, rule effectively, like, because he was too obsessed with parties and hanging out with the Duke of Buckingham, who could have possibly been his boyfriend. Anyway, sorry. They could have possibly been, like, there's a lot of controversy. You understand what I'm saying? They're like, oh, man, Charles also, like, Charles had a stammer. He had a stuttering problem, so he, like, tried to get rid of it for most of his life, and they, like, would, like, put rocks in his mouth and try to speak with rocks in his mouth, like, train his mouth to actually, like, work through his stammer. That didn't work out very well. He actually ended up shattering one of his teeth. So he used to run for days because he wanted to be fit and stuff like that. But it's hard to be fit and really intense when you're a very sickly kid, not to mention the fact that you only actually measured up to 5'4", right? So, like, he's a really short dude. So Charles's background, though, the biggest thing about him is he also believes in this divine right of kings, right? He believes in the divine right of kings, but not James's version of the divine right of kings. Not go sit in your house, have parties, have a court, have favorites is what they're called, right? Favorites as in this trusted advisor who you could or could not maybe even have a relationship with or something like that. And he was like, I don't want all that stuff. I want to be an absolute authority. And Charles believed that the best way to be an absolute authority is to prove your absolute authority in war, right? So Charles I, the second he comes to power, starts trying to eye up different people he wants to go to war with. One of the biggest ones he wants to go to war with is Spain. But here's the problem. We talked about this earlier. If you want to raise money, you got to raise money with Parliament consent, all right? Parliament has to agree to that. You need money for a war. Parliament refused to raise his taxes. So what does Charles do? He dissolves them, right? He fired them. He fired his parliament. He was like, go home. And he shut the parliament doors and he locked him out. He directly violated the Magna Carta. He just said, nope, and he just shut the doors on him, right? Now, he still isn't allowed to raise taxes because he doesn't have the ability to, but he fired his parliament because he got angry at him, right? That's crazy. And that's where we're going to stop. All right, so we're going to stop right there, and we're going to get into Charles a little bit more in depth a little bit later, all right? And we're going to get into some other stuff like that, but we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. I will see you guys then. Have a good one.